Someone finessed your pencil? Do you need one? I'll give you one. Yeah. There you go. Yep. All right. Okay, so look, guys. We are going to review what you should have learned in geometry. Unless you took math models last year. You took geometry last year, which is great because it means you are probably going to remember this better than if you took math models last year. That doesn't mean that you can't do it, but it just means that for you it's like 2 years ago because we did not review this in MMA last year. So to simplify a square root, you are going to separate into a product of a perfect square and whatever is left over. Now look over here to the side and you will see that you have a list of perfect squares. And you probably know all of them already. So let's go down the side here. What is the square root of 4? 2. What's the square root of 9? 3. Okay, so go down that list for me. Fill those out. One of them is a typo. Which one is it? Not 20. 91. What should it be? The square root of 81. Very good. So if you want to go in and fix this one right here, should be the square root of 81. And they go in order. Okay, so I didn't try to be tricky or anything. Okay, but those are all of your perfect squares. So you're going to separate into a combination of a perfect and then whatever's left over. You're going to simplify the perfect root. And then if there's 2 coefficients, you're going to combine by multiplication. Okay? So let's say that you're doing this very first one. So your number is the square root of 12. I want you to break that up into 2 square roots. So I'm going to take 12, I'm going to split it up into 2 square roots. Okay, now, when you break up 12, one of the numbers you break it up by has to be one of the numbers on this list. Okay, so 12 would be right here by 16, right? Can 12 divide by 16 evenly? No. Can it divide by 9? Can it divide by 4? 4 times what? 4 times 3. So I broke it up. This one's perfect. That's whatever's left over. Then my step 2 is to simplify the perfect square root. What is the square root of 4? So that would be 2 root 3. Now, if you had, I don't know who teaches what, but one of the teachers teaches it this way and the other one uses like a big factoring tree, and I'm not doing that. But if you remember the factoring tree and you want to do it that way, that's great. Okay, so let's do 3 root 50 next. Ready? So 3 square root, square root. Now 50 is my number. So 50 is pretty close to 49, so I'm going to start here. Can 50 divide by 49? What about 36? What about 25? Okay, 25 times what?
Wait, you can't go up, but you can't.
You should start close to that number, so like 50 is close to 49,
and then you go down.
And then go up the list. If you start at the top, you're not going to find the biggest one. Okay? So 50 is 25 times what? Sorry? 25 times 2. Okay, pretend the 3's not there. What is the square root of 25 then? 5 root 2. But then if there is a number already here on the front, so when I move my finger, remember that 3 was there, that's 3 times 5 root 2. And so your last step, if you look at step 3, how do I combine those coefficients now? Multiplication, so 3 times 5 is 15 root 2. So you're going to split it up, simplify, and then if there was already a number in the front, you just times them together. Okay? Alright, let's look at the next one. 32 is my number, so 2 square root, square root. Okay, 32, what is that pretty close to in my list?
36.
Close to 36. So can 32 divide by 25? What about 16? 16 times what? 16 times 2. And then remember, I'm pretending like this 2 isn't even here. What's the square root of 16? 4 root 2. And then I'm like, oh wait, when I move my finger, what was already in the front? 2. So that's 2 times 4 root 2. And then I take those outside numbers, times them together. 2 times 4 is...
Miss, I get everything. I just don't get the part where you like...
Where you pick the number, you mean?
No, like, if we start over, what's the closest number to 32 is 36.
Yep. And so then you say, can 32...
Where can that divide into... I don't get that.
So you're asking, can 32 divide by 36? Oh, okay. And then if it doesn't, then you do 32 divide by 25. That can't divide. Can 32 divide by 16? Yes. Okay, and then, hey guys, real quick, let me point something out to you. This is why, listen, this is why you have to start at the bottom. Because can 32 also divide by 4? Yes. And you want to get the biggest number. So if you pick from the top down, you're going to find the smallest number. But if you want the biggest number, you need to kind of work your way up.
Why do you want the biggest number?
Because otherwise you're not simplifying it all the way. You're like half, that's like half solving it. Okay, Fabian, yes?
So why'd you get the 2 from?
Okay.
2 squared.
2 squared?
Oh, yeah, number 3.
So it was, what's 16 times 2?
2. Oh.
So the second number is
right,
whatever's
times
left
that.
over when you divide.
Basically, that times that makes...
Yes, you got it. Okay, so when you are adding and subtracting, you can only add and subtract like radicals. So just like you can only combine like terms, you can only combine like radicals. So for example, on number 4, if I have 3 square roots of 2 plus 5 square roots of 2, how many square roots of 2 do you have altogether? 3 plus 5. 8 square roots of 2. But the reason that you're allowed to combine those is because they're both square roots of the same thing. Think about it, it's like 3x plus 5x would give you 8x. It's the same thing. Okay, now look at number 5. Do the square roots match?
Wait, so that's all you do?
Uh-huh. Okay, look at number 5 though. The square roots do not match. You cannot determine that they're like radicals or not until you simplify. So if I'm looking at 20, let's go to my list. What is 20 pretty close to? 16. Okay, can 20 divide by 16? No. Then I go up. 16 didn't work. Can 20 divide by 9?
No.
Can it divide by 4?
5.
4 times 5. Then I'd split that up. 4 times 5. And I'm just going to go ahead and finish this one. What is the square root of 4?
2.
So that's 2 root 5 plus. Now I'm going to move to my 45 side. Okay, what is 45 close to on the list? 49. Okay, so let's work our way up. Can 45 divide evenly by 36? 25. Can 45 divide by 16? Can it divide by 9?
Yeah, by 5.
9 times 5. And remember, 9 gets to come first because 9's on the list. 5's what's left over. What is the square root of 9? 3 root 5. And then when you get to there, if they're both root 5's, are you allowed to combine them?
Then you got 5 of them.
5 root 5. You're allowed to combine because they both have a root 5.
So now it's number 6.
Okay, so let's do number 6. So my number is a 12. Okay, now luckily 12 is small, so we don't have to start at the bottom of the list. We can start right here by 16. Can 12 divide by 9? It can divide by 4. 4 times what? 4 times 3 plus. Now, what is the square root of 4? 2 root 3. Okay, ready? We're ready to move to the 18 now. 18 is really close to 16. Can 18 divide by 16? Can 18 divide by 9? 9 times what? 9 times 2. What is the square root of 9?
3.
3 root 2.
2.
And am I allowed to combine those roots? Why not? Square root 3, square root 2, they can't go together. So in that case, you would put, those are not like radicals. Okay, if you ever can't think of the word radical, you can put not like terms, that's fine. Okay, but they're not like radicals, that means the square root number is not the same in the middle. Okay? Alright, the next thing that you are allowed to do is to multiply radicals, and you can do this with any radical. Okay? So we are going to skip number 7, we're going to go to number 8. Okay, when you are multiplying square roots, you need to multiply the outside numbers together and the inside numbers together. So look at my outside numbers. What is 4 times negative 3? Negative 12 in the front. Square root. Then I'm going to take the numbers in the middle, I'm going to times them together. So this was a square root 2 and a square root 6. Times them together, what is it? Square root 12. Then I got to look on my list. If 12's not perfect, I got to see if there's anything in there that is perfect that it can divide by. 4. Very good. So I'd have negative 12. And then I'm going to split this guy up into 4 times 3. Is anybody confused on why we're doing that? Okay, and then what is the square root of 4? 2 root 3. And then what can I do with those numbers on the outside if they're both coefficients? Multiply. So I'd take the negative 12 times 2, and I'd make it negative 24 root 3. Make sense? Alright, go to number 9, last one. Okay, multiply the numbers on the outside. If there's not a number here, it counts as a 1. So what's 7 times 1 on the outside? 7. What is the number on the inside going to be? 3 times 30? 90. Okay, good. From there, 90, what can it divide by off the list? You're going to have to start towards the bottom. 9. Good. 9 times what?
10.
Good. So I'd have 7 square root 9 times square root 10. What's the square root of 9?
3.
So I have 7 times 3 root 10. And then what's my last step with the 7 times 3? 21 root 10. Make sense? Okay. This is where it's a little bit new, so I need you to pay attention. Everything we just did, you should have at least already learned once. Okay? If you didn't, that's okay. You learned it today, hopefully. Okay, but an imaginary number is where this is new. So an imaginary number is when you take the square root of a negative number. So the square root of negative 1 is going to be I. Okay, and that stands for imaginary. Okay? Now, you are probably wondering, when will I ever use this in my life? Okay, imaginary numbers really are only relevant in electronics. So your phone, your TV, magnetic fields, all of that kind of stuff, you would use this. Okay, outside of that, you'll probably never see it again. But it's 1 week, okay, of your life, and then you're done with it. Okay? Unless you take pre-cal, and then I don't know if you'll use it again. Okay, so it's so easy, though, that you don't have to worry. Okay? It's kind of like, I'll never use this, whatever, but it's easy. So look at the negative 90. What perfect square can I draw out of the 90? We just did it. 9, good. So I'm going to split it up, though. Look. I'm going to put negative 9 times 10. Okay, now watch. What's the square root of 9? It would have been 3, right? But if it's a negative, you just put an I with it. So instead of being 3, it's 3I root 10, and you're still done.
Isn't it plus or minus?
It's not plus or minus unless it was a squared and you square rooted both sides. But we are going to do that on the back. Okay, look at number 11 right next to it. Okay, I keep my negative 3 in the front. I'm going to split this up. Look on your list. 48 is pretty close to 49. So that's where I'm going to start from. So ready? We're looking for 48. What can that divide by? Can 48 divide by 36? 25. 16? 16 times what? Okay, but I have to put the negative with the 16. And the 3 is left over. Then whatever the square root of 16 is, if it's negative, you just put an I with it. So my negative 3 is going to stay right here. What is the square root of negative 16? What would it be? 4I root 3. And the rules are the same. What would I do with those coefficients next? Negative 12I root 3 left over. Okay, so the actual way that it works is very similar to what you should already be semi-familiar with. Okay? Next one, let's do number 12. Okay, 27. Look at your list. That's really close to 25, so I'm going to start there. Okay, 27. Can it divide by 16? What about 9? 9 times what?
3.
So I'd have 10 in the front. Negative 9 times 3. Then what is the square root of negative 9? 3 what? 3i. And then remember, I can take those outside parts and times them together. What is 10 times 3i?
30i.
30i root 3. Okay? Turn over to the back, please.
So that I is just to replace the
The negative, correct. And if there wasn't a negative in there, you wouldn't put the I. That's the only reason the I is coming into play, is because you're square rooting something negative. All right, on the back. Let's do number 13. Flip back over and look at your list if you need to. Okay, we want to know, what can 200 divide by? So look on your list. You'll have to start at the very bottom. What can 200 divide by? We just flipped over. We just flipped over to the other side.
yeah.
Okay, 100. So it would be negative 100 times 2. And then what's the square root of negative 100?
You can.
It'd be
yeah.
10, and then the negative turns into an I.
Is it a negative though?
Uh-huh. So what we just did on the front is, if it's negative, you put an I with it, and you're allowed to do it now.
Because I was like, I don't know if you can do it negatives.
Yeah. Okay, last one, we're going to skip 15, but look at number 14. We want to break up 8. What perfect square can 8 divide by? Negative 4 times 2. What's the square root of negative 4?
2i.
2i root 2. And then remember, the same rules apply. If there's a 2i and there was already a 2, I got to times those together. So what would I get out here? 4i root 2 left over. Not too bad? Okay, great.
Miss, what if the number in front was a negative? So it would be like 2i times 2. Will it be positive?
No, it would stay like when we did
I?
when we did this one. That was what happened.
Oh yeah.
So it's okay. You can have a negative in the front as well.
Because I thought like the I is just like another for negative, so you take off the I.
Yeah, they can't cross each other out though. Alright, so now we're going to practice, okay, extra throwback, solving with square roots. But remember, whenever we got a negative, we'd say, oh, no real solution. Okay, not anymore. Now we can do it. So let's do number 16. What would I do first to get x squared by itself? Minus 64. Okay. So 0 minus 64 means x squared is negative 64. Then from here, what would I do next? Square root. And before, you would have said, oh, no solution, not anymore. What's the square root now of negative 64? 8i. Very good, because the square root of 64 is 8, and the negative turns into an I. So it would be x equals plus or minus 8i. Okay, look at number 17 next. What would I do first? Okay, minus 20. 0 minus 20 is negative 20. Can I square root now?
No, we'll get rid of that too.
Got to get rid of the 5 by dividing. Good. Okay, negative 20 divided by 5, what do I get?
Oh yeah, you get.
Okay, negative 4. And now to get rid of the little 2, the squared, I have to take the what? Square root. What's the square root of negative 4? It would be what? Plus or minus 2i. And remember that the I comes from the fact that it was negative, but the square root of 4 is still 2. Okay? Alright, look at number 18. What would I do first? Subtract the 100. Good. What is 0 minus 100? Okay, so 9x squared is negative 100. What would I do next? Divide by 9. But wait, 100 can't divide by 9. Is that okay? Yes. Because remember that fractions have a special property with square roots. So I'm not worried about the fact that they didn't divide. So x squared is negative 100 over 9. What would I do next? Square root. And what is the rule with fractions? You're allowed to do what?
Square root both numbers.
Do them separately. So on top, if I had negative 100, what's the square root of that? 10i.
Is it plus
And 3.
or minus?
And then on bottom, you'd get a 3. And then, just like Yusuf said, you do have that plus minus in the front.
Wait, so the I would only go with
The I, technically, you could put the I out here at the back, but if you're going to put it in the fraction, you should put it on top. Okay, that's a good question. We are going to skip 19, and we're going to go to the ones with the parentheses. Okay, so that you have time to do your homework. Let's do number 20. Okay, look at it. Think about what we learned before Thanksgiving. What would I do first?
The parentheses or the equation, or the, what do you call it first? Yeah.
Yeah, but I can't get to that till I get rid of this, right?
Minus 15.
Okay, minus 15.
And then
Negative 16.
Okay, so these guys cross out. I have x plus 3 squared in parentheses and a negative 16
square root.
square root. And when I square root before, I would have said, oh, no solution, but not anymore, right? We can square root negative 16. What do we get?
4i.
So x plus 3 equals plus or minus 4i. And then your last step, remember with parentheses, you have to move that number in the middle. You have to move it over. So if it was a plus 3, how would I undo a plus 3? So I would minus 3 here and minus 3 in the front. These guys cross out. That's your answer. X equals negative 3 plus minus 4i. Uh-huh. Wait, 19? You're talking about up here?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, hang on. Let's do one more with parentheses first. Next one that we're going to do is going to be number 21. Okay? Oh, yeah, do this 21, sorry. Okay, what would I do first? That plus 5. What is negative 22 minus 5 more? Okay, so I have x plus 5 squared, negative 27. What's my next step? Square root. Okay, this is important. Okay, on the front, we learned how to break 27 down. Is 27 already perfect? No. Now 16 was, but that's not. So we're going to have to break it up into 9 times 3. Good. So I would break that up into negative 9 times 3. And then what is the square root of negative 9? So 3i root 3 with a plus minus still in the front. Then from there, if this is an x plus 5 over here, then what would I have to do to get rid of that plus 5? Minus it. And you just write it right here in the front. So I'd minus 5 here, and I'd minus 5 here. So your answer would be x equals negative 5 plus or minus 3i root 3. Okay? Let's do 22 right next to it. Last one. And then I'll go back and do 19 if we need to. Or do we want to just do one off your homework?
No, let's do 22 real quick.
Alright, what will we do first?
Minus 24.
Minus 24? We'll do one off your homework too, okay? Okay. So minus 24. Okay, you do need to add or subtract first. Okay, then divide second. What would I do now? Square root? Am I ready? No. What do I have to do next? What is negative 24 divided by 2? Negative 12. What would I do next?
Square root.
Is 12 already a perfect square? Then you got to look at that list. What can 12 divide by on the
3
list?
and 4, or 2 and 6. Miss, which one would you rather pick?
Well, it has to be on the list. So 6 and 2 are not on the list, but 4 was. So I'd do negative 4 times 3. And then what is the square root of negative 4? 2i. Very good. So I'd have, let me just rewrite this. X minus 6 equals plus or minus 2i. And then my root 3 left over. And then what would I put in front of that plus minus to solve? If it's a minus 6, I would plus 6 and 6 there. And that would be your answer. Okay? Now, if you want to see 19, there are a couple like this on your homework, but it's pretty similar. So what would I do first on 19? What would I do first on 19?
Oh, minus 64.
Minus 64.
And then you
So I'd have 8x squared negative 64. What would I do next? Divide by 8. So I have x squared is negative 64 divided by 8 is 8, right? Then from there, what would I need to do? Square root. And when I get to the square root of 8, since it's not perfect, I would just have to break it up. Okay, so you would say, okay, x equals, let me write over here. If it's the square root of negative 8, I would break that up into negative 4 times 2. And remember, the perfect one always gets to come first. The leftovers has to come second. Then what is the square root of negative 4?
Negative 2. 2i.
2i root 2. What needs to go in the front?
Plus or minus.
Plus minus. And so the difference is that the square root, when you take the square root, that's where that plus minus comes in. Okay? Alright, the one off your homework that I want to do together is number, it's on the back, number 16. Okay, look at it. What would I do first? Okay, minus 4, that's correct. 0 minus 4 is what?
Negative 4.
Okay. So 4x plus 2 squared equals negative 4. What next?
Divide by 4.
Divide by 4. Negative 4 divided by 4 is what? Okay. Next step.
Square.
Now, when I made your list, I was being kind of lazy. Is 1 already a perfect square? Yes, I didn't put it on your list. But 1 already is a perfect square. What's the square root of 1? 1. Then what's the square root of negative 1? 1
Negative 1.
I. So you'd have x plus 2 equals plus or minus 1i. Now, if you want to just put the I and not put the 1, do you think that's probably okay? Yes. Just like I don't have to put 1x, I can just put x. Okay, from here, how do I get rid of the plus 2? Minus 2, minus 2. These guys cross out. X equals negative 2 plus or minus I. If you want to put the 1 in front of the I, that's totally fine. But it is not necessary. Okay, let's do one more. I want you to do number 17. Okay, what would I do first?
Subtract 2.
Okay, minus 2. Negative 30 minus 2 more gives me what? Negative 32. Then I go to square root both sides. Is 32 already perfect? No, it is not. So we got to look back at that list.
36 is close to 2.
Okay, so then work your way up. What is 32 going to divide evenly by? 25? 16? 16 times what? So I do negative 16 times 2. And remember, the negative gets to go in the perfect square root because it's a perfect square. Okay, what's the square root of negative 16?
4.
Plus or minus 4i. Root 2 has to stay left over. Then right here, these guys cross out, so I have x minus 1 equals. Last step, how do I get rid of the minus 1? Plus 1, plus 1. These guys cross out. You have x equals 1 plus minus 4i root 2. Okay? Just a heads up, on number 13, it can't simplify. So when you do it, there's not a perfect square that comes out of it. So let's go ahead and do that one. What would you do first on 13? Okay, minus 90. What would you do second after you minus 90? Okay, good. So minus 90.
Miss, do you divide the 9 by 90?
Uh-huh. 9x squared is negative 90, then divide by 9. What's left over? Negative 10. Then what do I do? Square root. And then when you look at 10, is there anything on the list that 10 can divide by? No, so you would just leave it. If you wanted, you could split it up into negative 1 times 10, right? Because isn't negative 1 technically on your list? So it would just be x equals plus or minus I root 10. Technically, -1 does count, but if you left it as the square root of -10, that would have been fine, because it doesn't really divide by a number. Okay? There's one on the front that everybody kind of keeps messing up, so I'm going to have you go ahead and try it first. And it is... it actually wasn't 7, it was number 8.
Oh, yeah.
So give number 8 a shot. So you're going to have 2 square root plus square root. Remember, you got to break both of those numbers up into a perfect and a leftovers.
What? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So look at your 18. What can that divide into?
9
9 and
and 2.
2.
And then it simplifies 3.
Okay. And then 63, what can that divide into? 9 and 7. Good. Okay, then I'm going to take both of my little perfect guys and I'm going to simplify them. What is the square root of 9 for both? So this is 2 times 3 root 2 plus 3 root 7.
It's a 6.
Am I ready to keep going? Why not?
Because it's not same as
Remember, you can only combine if this guy and this guy match.
No real like terms. Whatever.
Not like radicals would be the perfect answer, but if you put not like terms, that would be fine. Not like radicals. Remember that multiplying and dividing, it doesn't matter. They don't have to match. But if you're adding and subtracting, they have to have the same radical. Okay?
What? Why does 10 look so confusing?
I don't know. Gonna do it? Alright, so y'all just finish up, work on your homework. Okay, what would I get in the front?
How do you do 10?
Okay, so multiply the outside numbers together. What do you get?
-12.
Okay, -12. Multiply the inside numbers. What do you get?
Oh, that's basically what you do.
Mm-hmm.
3 and 15 is 45.
Mm-hmm. And then now you have to see if that can break down. What can 45 divide by off your perfect
9, 5.
list? Good. So you'd have -12, 9 times 5. And then what's the square root of 9?
Then 3,
3 root 5.
5.
And then what?
Oh, yeah.
Take those two
And
together.
30, -36 is 5.
Yep, you got it.
Okay.
So when you're multiplying, you times outside numbers together, inside numbers together, and then try to simplify. You don't have to do that if it's, that's 14 minus 5. Only if they're multiplied. See how this has a plus and a minus in the middle and these don't?
What?
These you're multiplying. These you don't. So look at it. Do your square roots already match? Okay, these already match. Then oops, you just add and subtract the numbers in the front. So like if it's
So number 9, you just multiply them? Oh, okay.
So if you had 14 minus 5, how many would be left over? 9 root 5, and you're done. But the reason why is because the square root part already matched. Does that make sense?
Yeah.